Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Monday, February 11th, 2019. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the latest film and TV news. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief, Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Weekend Editor, Brad Oman.
Hey, that's me.
And writer, Hoai-Tran Bui.
Hey, everyone.
So normally we are doing a water cooler episode on a Monday, but Jacob is out sick, so we all wish that he will get better. And tomorrow, hopefully, we'll return with a usual water cooler episode. But today, it works out anyways, because there was a lot of news that hit today and over the weekend. And the biggest bit of news, I think, came from the TCAs, with Hulu announcing that they're teaming up with Disney's Marvel Studios on an animated Marvel Cinematic Universe of sorts. So, Brad, tell us about it.
Yeah, so what it sounds like Hulu is doing is they're kind of taking a cue from Netflix and creating a series of individual animated shows focusing on Marvel characters, and then they will bring them together into a series a la The Defenders, except this one is called The Offenders, or without the emphasis, The Offenders.
Yeah.
And there's a series of 4 shows that will lead up to this, and it sounds like they'll be in the vein of kind of like a mix of Adult Swim and Marvel Comics. It seems like, especially when we get a load of the various comedic talents that are on board each of these shows. So we're looking more something that is geared towards a mature audience and not necessarily like the kind of superhero shows you normally see at places like Disney XD or anything like that.
With Disney buying 20th Century Fox, they're going to own a majority stake in Hulu, so it makes sense that they're invested in Hulu, and they've kind of insinuated, I think Bob Iger has insinuated, that the content that won't be family friendly from those two studios is going to make its way TV wise onto Hulu. So let's talk about this first one. This is Marvel's M.O.D.O.K. Is that how you pronounce it?
I believe that is how you pronounce it. M.O.D.O.K is one of those, one of the more obscure characters, if you will, from Marvel Comics. It stands for mental, mobile, mechanized organism designed only for killing. And the character is basically the M.O.D.O.K is this egomaniacal supervillain. He has a huge head and a really tiny mechanized body. He's extremely intelligent, and in this series, basically, he's struggling to maintain control of his evil organization and his demanding family. So it's likely that his small stature will come into play when it comes to his leadership capabilities and whatnot. The most exciting thing about this series is that Patton Oswalt is writing with Jordan Blum, who has written on Community and American Dad. And Patton Oswalt's also executive producing, along with Marvel TV's usual executive producer, Jeff Loeb. And Patton Oswalt is very famously a huge comic book nerd. He loves comic book characters. Basically anything nerd-related, he is all about it. And so having him aboard an animated series like this is extremely promising. It's really the one thing that has me remotely interested in a series about M.O.D.O.K. So I'm definitely down to check this out whenever it comes to Hulu.
You know, I've read my share of Marvel Comics, and I don't think I've ever read anything that featured M.O.D.O.K. in a featured capacity in any way, but I feel like most people out there would recognize him. He is iconic. The look of him, even though, I feel like many people don't know who he is. He's been in a bunch of the Marvel video games and stuff too, so it's not just the comics. The character has been tossed around quite a bit. And actually, there was a time when M.O.D.O.K. was considered to be one of the villains that appeared in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, but it ended up not working out, and they kind of revamped it and switched gears a little bit.
I don't know much about this character, if anything at all. Patton Oswalt does sort of pique my interest a little bit, as does Jordan Blum, because I really enjoyed Community. But I can't say I have an interest in this series.
I feel like out of everybody on staff, you are probably the one that watches the most animated content each year.
I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
I mean, I it's really early to say. So it'll have to be a trailer or something for me to, or like the talent announced for me to kind of want to get interested in this series.
Yeah, I think I'm interested because of Patton Oswalt, but I don't watch many animated shows these days. Like even, there's a Star Wars animated series that is in canon and takes place during the new, Star Wars sequel trilogy, and I'm not watching it because, there's just too many things to watch these days, and this is going to have to be really good to get my attention. The thing that worries me here is, unlike the Marvel Plus shows that have been formally announced and rumored, those shows are going to be executive produced with Kevin Feige, who runs the Marvel Cinematic Universe. These shows are produced by Jeff Loeb, who is responsible for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Netflix shows. So
it's... Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is not bad, Peter. It's not bad. It's good.
Part of me wonders
good is a strong word, HG. Good is.
Part of me wonders if maybe Jeff Loeb's involvement is more just because he's like the head of Marvel TV, and maybe it's just more of he's kind of involved, but they'll let these people do their own thing.
Oh, maybe, but I just think
hope so.
He's done some good stuff in comics, but I think if you look at the breadth of stuff he has created for Netflix and ABC, sorry, HG, I feel like I don't have much trust in this guy. He has a horrible, he's almost like Avi Arad in that everything he touches, he kind of brings some bad to. I don't know. Maybe I am attributing way too much to this man, but I've talked to him many times throughout the years when promoting film, shows like Daredevil and stuff, and he really seems like one of those Hollywood dudes that thinks he knows everything, and it's clear that he doesn't. But okay, let's talk about another series that they announced. This is Marvel's Hit Monkey. What is this, Brad?
Well, if you weren't on board for a tiny, egomaniacal, mechanized supervillain, you probably won't be on board for this. It's Marvel's Hit Monkey, which tells the story of a wronged Japanese snow monkey who is mentored by the ghost of an American assassin as he cuts a wide swath through the Tokyo underworld in a darkly cinematic and brutally funny revenge saga.
Okay, now this sounds like something HT can get on board for. No?
Yeah, I'm down. Yeah,
it's actually, a monkey in the Tokyo underworld, HT.
This does sound pretty cool. It sounds something akin to Samurai Jack, which was a really great Cartoon Network series, and I am interested in this based on this premise. Actually, I'm down. I don't know much about the writers.
The writers. They're also directors. Josh Gordon and Will Speck. They did Blades of Glory, that Will Ferrell movie, The Office Christmas Party, which I never saw, and The Switch. Brad, you're our resident comedy guy. How do those credits add up for you?
They're fine for the most part. Blades of Glory is definitely the goofier of the Will Ferrell sports comedies that he's done, and probably the worst, but it's not bad. It's still pretty funny. Office Christmas Party was pretty good.
It has the least legacy, I think, out of any of them.
Yeah, that's for sure. But Office Christmas Party is pretty good. The Switch is solid, although it feels a little bit more like it should have been some kind of indie Sundance comedy instead of what it was, but they do seem like an odd pair to tackle something like this. I'm not necessarily familiar as far as if they've ever done anything with animation before or even action to know if they're suited for this, because the comedy movies definitely don't show that they are adept at doing that kind of material. So this could be kind of a test for them, and it could allow them to break out and do something much different than we've seen them do before.
Yeah, and HT mentioned Samurai Jack. I'm picturing some kind of really stylistic, trying to be balls to the walls, looking unlike any of the other Marvel animated shows, just from the description alone. But then on the other hand, we know that these characters are going to have to meet up in the same world later on. So maybe that is not the case.
Maybe it could be something like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, in which all these characters have their own separate animation style, and yet somehow still work in the same world. So I don't know if that'll be the case, but that would be a good way to consolidate like the different styles that we already kind of see just based on these premises.
Yeah, you know, the promising thing about this is it's not like they're just taking big name characters and being like, we're going to make this animated cinematic universe. All of these characters sound like animation is the medium to bring these characters to life. Do you know what I mean? Like having this this snow monkey on a revenge tale through the Tokyo underworld, animation. M.O.D.O.K, animation. Howard the Duck. We'll get to the rest, but animation. Brad, actually, let's move on to the next one. This is Marvel's Tigra and Dazzler show.
Yes, Marvel's Tigra and Dazzler show, teaming up two woke superheroes and best friends, Tigra and Dazzler, as they fight for recognition among powered people who make up the 8 million stories in Los Angeles. The series is going to be written by Erica Rivanoja from South Park, Last Man on Earth, and also Chelsea Handler, the comedian who also had several of her own talk shows on the E! Network and Netflix. And, of course, Jeff Loeb is also executive producing this, as he's doing all of them. And this one sounds like it's the most, I don't know, I guess, different out of all of them. Because Dazzler is known for being sort of this like pop star style character, even though she's a mutant. She has light energy beams, and then Tigra is basically a character who has the traits of a tiger. And I don't know, the description seems almost like intentionally vague, like there's maybe more to it than they're getting at.
How crazy is it, by the way, that we have a Disney animated show that uses the word woke in its official description? I don't know. We live in crazy times. And Chelsea Handler, who I guess is going to be a writer on this, she really hasn't written anything except for her show Chelsea Lately, which I have not seen. Brad, have you watched that?
No, I'm not the biggest fan of Chelsea Handler. I don't necessarily think she's bad. She's just not usually my cup of tea.
Yeah. And Erica, in addition to writing for South Park and Last Man on Earth, the movies that you skipped here, Brad, are Girl Trip and Ugly Dolls. She provided the story for Trolls as well. So it's a mix of good and bad there. I'm interested to see what this is. This description is too vague to, I think, make a big judgment on. Let's move.
Part of me wonders if it's going to be a series that kind of focuses on them being more like, almost like celebrities who are trying to like outdo each other and be the more popular superhero or something like that. Like, because that's kind of seems like that's what it's getting at.
Possibly. It'll be interesting. Okay, let's move on to Marvel's Howard the Duck. Of course, we saw Howard the Duck in, spoiler alert, a post-credit scene for Guardians of the Galaxy, and people have been kind of demanding that he make it into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I don't think that's going to happen. And I think this show kind of solidifies the fact that he's probably not going to be really a big part of the Cinematic Universe, but he will be part of this animated universe. And Brad, what do we know about the show?
So this says that Marvel's Howard the Duck is trapped in a world he never made, but America's favorite fighting fowl hopes to return home with the help of his unstoppable gal pal, Beverly, before the evil Dr. Bong can turn him into the crispiest dish on the menu. And this series is being written by Kevin Smith, yes, that Kevin Smith of Clerks and Jay and Silent Bob fame, and Dave Willis, who is a writer on Adult Swim's series Space Ghost, Aqua Teen Hunger Force, Archer, and Squidbillies. And of course, Jeff Loeb is executive producing, blah, 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 blah.
So Kevin Smith has been saying for a while now he's been working on the biggest thing that he's ever been part of in his entire career. People thought it was Star Wars. He said no. People thought it was going to be a Marvel movie. He said no, it's not a Marvel movie. Is this the thing he's been talking about, Brad?
I think it's possible, but at the same time, like, he very much went out of his way to say that it was like the biggest IP that he had ever worked on. And like, I'm not sure Howard the Duck qualifies as a character who is bigger than like The Flash or Supergirl, since he directed episodes of those series on the CW. And Kevin Smith's also written comic books for the likes of Batman and Daredevil. So I don't know if maybe he was just talking about the scope of the project, because like even though Supergirl and the Flash are very big network TV shows, I guess something like this is a really big deal because it's linked to all these other series and will be part of the crossover series, The Offenders. So maybe this is what he's talking about, but it seems like maybe he, like, I don't know, oversold it a little bit, or, you know, maybe didn't necessarily say what he meant to in the right capacity. So I don't know, maybe there's something else he's working on, but it does seem like there's a chance this could be the big secret project he was teasing.
Yeah, and this isn't the first time that Kevin Smith has worked on animation in TV. He had Clerks, the animated series, which I love. I think that show was so far ahead of its time. I think it kind of did what later, you know, Family Guy and those kind of shows did, and it unfortunately kind of got shafted on whatever network it was on. Was that an ABC or? I don't know.
It was on ABC.
Yeah. Brad, are you excited for Howard the Duck?
It's probably the one that I'm most excited about out of this entire lineup, simply because Howard the Duck has a lot of potential as a character, and Kevin Smith is somebody who I've loved, you know, for a while. Even though his recent films have left a lot to be desired, I still have a soft spot for Kevin Smith in my heart. And having him tackle something like Howard the Duck in an animated form sounds exactly like something that Kevin Smith would be perfect at doing. So I'm definitely willing to see how this turns out.
I was a huge Kevin Smith fan, and I feel like things went downhill after Zack and Miri Make a Porno, and notoriously during that movie, in the editing room, he got high with Seth Rogen and then became a huge stoner. A lot of people thought he was a stoner before that because of Jay and Silent Bob, you know, their stance on drugs and stuff like that. But he became a stoner then, and then he started making these movies like Tusk and what was the one that was at Sun? The other one that was
Red State.
Red State. No, the other the one with his daughter.
Yoga Hosers.
Yoga Hosers. Like, he's been making these horrible movies that are based on conversations he had while he was high on his podcast. And they're really bad, but I feel like maybe, you know, Kevin Smith, maybe the high Kevin Smith coming up with ideas for Howard the Duck is the perfect combination of things. Does that sound like anything you'd want to watch, HT?
Yeah, that actually, you're selling it pretty well, even though I don't have that much interest in Howard the Duck either, despite this being the biggest name property of these series that I'm familiar with. I only really know Howard the Duck through pop culture osmosis. I've never seen the infamous 1980s movie, despite seeing some scenes and just kind of knowing why it was a little bit weird, because it was like, whatever her name was, this girl was going to have sex with Howard the Duck, which is a little bit odd, but and I remember seeing him in Guardians of the Galaxy and everyone being very excited, but I've never had like personal ties with him. But I can get behind this animated series, and maybe with Kevin Smith behind it, I could finally see what the deal is with Howard the Duck.
Now, all, 4 of these, 5 of these characters, 4 of these shows are going to team up in Marvel's The Offenders. Do we know anything more about that, Brad?
Basically, all it says is that all these characters will team up in order to save the world and certain parts of the universe, which is an interesting way of phrasing things, and it makes me wonder exactly what that means.
Yeah. And we don't know who's involved in this one. It doesn't say, like, who's creatively involved. I'm assuming this is so far into the future on this timeline because they're going to probably have to do each of these shows before then and then lead up to The Offenders. So maybe there isn't a showrunner on board yet.
True, and I would assume that they would probably all have their own hand in kind of helping the series along anyway, in the same way that the directors of the various individual Marvel franchises have consulted on the likes of Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. So maybe that's something that will also happen here with The Offenders.
Cool. Let's move on let's go from the Marvel universe to the DC universe. Let's talk about Pennyworth, the TV show that we love to kind of egg on in our /film Slack channel. This is the origin story for Alfred, young hot Alfred, learning to become the butler and helper of Batman. HT, we just learned some new stuff about the show from the TCAs, and before that, what do we know?
Yeah, so it's not enough for Alfred Pennyworth just to be a British SAS officer and hardened butler, hardened butler to be. But in his origin series that is set to debut soon on Epix, he will be battling the grandkids of Jack the Ripper, because that's the only villain that we know from London, apparently. So he, in this origin series, it's set in 1960s London, which is way after the time of Jack the Ripper, who was infamous an infamous serial killer during the time of the, I think, early 1900s, late 1800s. And but here he'll be battling the grandkids of Jack the Ripper, or the descendants, rather, according to producer Danny Cannon, who said that the show will feature archetypal villains and classic villains of British literature, including Jack the Ripper's descendants.
Jack the Ripper's descendants. Do we want to see a show where Alfred, the SAS agent who's going to eventually become the butler, is going after Jack the Ripper? Oh, by the way, how much of a demotion is that?
I feel like this series is just like a Mad Libs of whatever British literary or pop culture classics they can throw in. And this is just the peak of that, I think. This is just, I don't really know how this will end up. I kind of applaud them for their ambition. Yeah. But this does not seem, this seems just like a strange choice. And it's kind of sad too that, like, apparently Jack the Ripper's descendants are doomed to share his thirst for blood.
Yeah. I think there was a Batman series that took place back in the time of Jack the Ripper with Detective Batman going after Jack the Ripper. Maybe that was Gotham by...
Gotham by Gaslight.
Gaslight.
It was, yeah. It was a DC Comics one-shot that was from the Elseworlds sort of issues, and it took place in that time period and saw Batman tussling with the infamous serial killer. It also became a 2018 animated film, which was just Gotham by Gaslight, I think.
Yeah, I wonder if this is going to take any inspiration from that. And Fred, our reporter Fred Tobel, is at the TCAs, and there was some information relayed there about this world. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, HJ?
Yeah, so Pennyworth, which is the name of the series, will be its own take on the 1960s, sort of how Inglourious Basterds told Quentin Tarantino's version of World War II, in which his heroes could change the course of history. So, for example, the Queen of England is a character in Pennyworth, but it's not Queen Elizabeth II. Heller, who is the showrunner for this series, said this is very much an alternate universe. It's not England in the 1960s as we remember it. So he is, the Pennyworth in this series is a young man whose father was a butler, and his father wanted him to be a butler, but it's the last thing he wanted to do. So of course he goes off to join the SAS and ends up becoming a butler anyways.
He discovers that is his calling. Mm-hmm. And what else do we know about this world? So
it's inspired partly by Michael Caine's take, actually, in The Dark Knight. Bruna Heller kind of credits Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy with introducing the idea that Alfred was an SAS soldier in his youth. And in this series, it'll be kind of about how the world is different back then and how the world will change in order to create what comes after it. And it kind of questions, or it fills in the blanks about why he goes to America, how he ends up in Gotham, and why he ends up serving Thomas Wayne.
Yeah. Why did he take that big demotion from being James Bond to, I just gonna help this rich guy's son become a vigilante? Brad, are you at all interested in this show?
No, I don't care. Like, I have no interest whatsoever in Alfred's backstory. Even the first look picture, I see the Jack Bannon playing him, and he doesn't look like anything like remotely resembling a character that I want to follow. Getting into scuffles with Jack the Ripper's grandkids, it's like I don't see where the value is here. It's another thing where everyone's going to be waiting to see like what links there are that set up, what Alfred does to make Bruce Wayne Batman, and I don't know. It just feels like way too much of a reach.
Where's the show airing, HT?
It's going to be on Epix.
Which is interesting because it's a good transition to our next story. Epix is jumping into the streaming service wars with a new streaming service called Epix Now. You wrote about this for the site, HT. What should we know about Epix Now?
Yeah, so Epix Now was just launched yesterday, and it will be a subscription service that is $5.99 per month, and it offers both Epix original series as well as MGM's entire movie library. So that includes films from the archives of MGM, Paramount, and Lionsgate. That includes films like A Quiet Place, Annihilation, and more. And the Epix original series, of course, includes Pennyworth, as well as other new shows such as Godfather of Harlem, starring Forest Whitaker, Perpetual Grace Limited, featuring Sir Ben Kingsley, the docuseries Punk from Iggy Pop, and Elvis Goes There with Elvis Mitchell. This streaming service will be available on the App Store for iPhone, iPad, Apple TV, and Google Play for Android phones and tablets. And it will also be coming to Roku devices, which was announced last month, and eventually also make its way to Amazon Fire TV, as well as additional devices that are going to be rolled out over the course of the year.
Did you say how much the service is going to cost?
Yes, this is $5.99 per month.
You know, that's not that much money, but how many movies are offered between MGM, Paramount, and you said another studio, right?
Lionsgate.
Like,
yes.
Those three studios don't... I mean, MGM probably has the largest library of the bunch, right?
Yeah. They don't go into the details of how many movies will be offered from these. Just from saying that it's MGM's full library kind of gives me the impression that it's going to be going into classics as well, which would be a major appeal for Epix now. It's something that you don't really associate with Epix, but having MGM's library, which could go into classics, could eventually just have it rival a Warner Brothers upcoming streaming service, as well as kind of fill in the gaps that we've had since Filmstruck was struck down.
Yeah. So it seems like in the future we're going to have to subscribe to Netflix. We're going to have to subscribe to Hulu if we want some of those Marvel animated cinematic universe shows. We're going to also have to subscribe to Disney Plus and whatever Warner Media is coming up with, and then HBO Go, and then also Epix, and then you add all those together and it costs more than the price of the cable subscription that we were trying to get rid of when cutting the cord, right?
Mm-hmm.
Brad, is this something you would subscribe to?
Probably not. It doesn't seem like they're offering enough for me to take advantage of it, especially since their original programming leaves something to be desired. I do hope and wonder, though, if this means that there might be some kind of deal brewing where they can figure out a way to join Movies Anywhere, because one of the most frustrating things for me right now is that movies from Paramount and Lionsgate and MGM are not included in the Movies Anywhere deal, so none of the movies that I have from those studios on iTunes cross over to Vudu or Movies Anywhere or anything like that. So if there's some kind of thing that helps get that along, then I'm all for that.
I feel like people like Chris and Ben would be interested in this just from the entire MGM library alone. That sounds like it could be a cool deal. I just don't think Epix is going to bring enough original content to the mix. I remember, I don't think I've ever subscribed to Epix, and back in the day, I think 10 years ago, their big claim to fame was having Kevin Smith was recording stand-up specials, Q&A specials for Epix, and that was their big exclusives. But who knows? Maybe Pennyworth will be worth checking out and paying that $5.99 at least for 1 month to binge through that series. But we'll have to see. Over the weekend, some news hit. James Cameron has been doing some press lately because of Battle Angel being in theaters, and we learned a bit about the new Terminator movie, Terminator 6, which is in production. Brad, what do we know?
Terminator 6 is coming this fall, and we don't know a ton about it, but James Cameron did finally give us a working title for the movie while he was doing some press over the weekend about Alita Battle Angel, and he said that right now their working title is Terminator Dark Fate. But since he does know that
sounds like a bad video game title, like a video game spin-off.
I thought it sounded like a tie-in novel title.
Oh yeah, well yeah, I would go with that too.
Yeah, so it's he did say that that's the title they're working with right now, so it sounds like it's maybe subject to change. They're probably just testing some other titles maybe and figuring out what the best approach is. They'll probably have to decide pretty soon, though, since I'm sure they'll need to start their marketing campaign sometime in the coming months, since the movie does come out this November. But I don't know. At this point, I'm not sure that you can come up with like a great Terminator title that doesn't sound cheesy, because the options are I think few and far between when you have a title that is already kind of cheesy in itself that's called Terminator.
We also learned some more interesting news that Arnold Schwarzenegger's character is going to be a new cyborg.
Yes, apparently, in addition to confirming the working title, James Cameron said, quote, "Arnold's back and he's bad. He's a different Terminator than you've ever seen before. I mean, literally, he's a different chassis number, but he's also a very different guy than you've seen before." Now, we've gotten a look at how Arnold Schwarzenegger will appear in the movie, but we had no idea as to what kind of Terminator be or anything like that. Unfortunately, Cameron didn't provide any details, but I wonder if, since this movie is meant to take place after the events of Terminator 2 Judgment Day, if maybe we'll get some kind of hybrid between the T-1000's more advanced liquid metal technology and the usual look of Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator. It does appear in what we've seen from the movie that Arnold Schwarzenegger has aged, so we're not going to get another young Terminator or anything like that. But this is in addition to the fact that Gabriel Luna is also playing a different kind of Terminator in this movie as well. So since we know so little about this movie, it's hard to know exactly, just what kind of new Terminator this is.
I'm so curious if people are actually going to go see this movie, because I feel like people have been Terminatored out by all the, recent sequels, and people have very much thought they were lackluster. But, James Cameron's back here, and Arnold is back, and I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what this actually looks like when they actually release a trailer. But speaking of trailers, we have one last thing to talk about, and I know we're going long, but this is something we need to discuss, guys. Last night, Disney released a TV spot for Aladdin that finally showed us Will Smith as the big blue genie. And he is big and he is blue. When they showed the first trailer for this, I think I was the only one that was very positive about this. I have such an optimistic, hopeful view on all these things. Bringing these animated films to life. It kind of looked, I don't know. It looked promising to me, but then I saw this TV spot that showed Will Smith basically, I guess, in digital blue makeup, and I'm not sure I even want to see this film now. HT, what is your reaction to this spot?
Oh boy. I was the complete opposite reaction of you in terms of the beginning, Peter, and that I was not looking forward to this film at all. And I think this just kind of hammered in that I am not interested in this movie. This uncanny valley version of Will Smith is just so disconcerting. I don't know how I could watch this movie without just laughing the entire time. It doesn't look good.
That's an understatement. That's saying Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is good.
All right, okay. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is fine, Peter. How's that?
Yeah, it's fine.
It looks really bad, I'm saying, for Will Smith. And, I don't really have the benefit of the doubt for this, because I just don't think Guy Ritchie was right for this film in the first place. I think that it has leaned way too much into the original film's iconography to be something that will interest me beyond just rewatching the original animated film. I'm not interested in this movie. I'm even less so because of this film, because of this TV spot. And so, it's bad. It's bad, Peter.
When this first hit, we saw someone took a screenshot. I think they took a photo of their TV on Twitter and posted it, and it got posted into our Slack channel. And Brad, you were the first person to see this image of Will Smith as the genie, and you were like, "No, this is a Photoshop. It's not real."
Yeah, and I thought it had to be fake, and because it didn't help that it was a picture of a screen, and so I thought it was just someone trying to make it look like it was authentic. Because Will Smith's face just looks so funky in this. It's clearly they're doing some kind of motion capture performance thing with his face. But it's not finished yet. It's still. It almost looks like the way that Jeff Bridges' young face does in Tron Legacy, in retrospect, where it looks more like a video game than a real face with visual effects applied to it. So I'm hoping that maybe this is just one of those things where it's so early in the game and they released a version of it where it looks as good as it can right now, and it'll look better in the final version. Because I will say there's a still photo that they released where the genie is pointing at Aladdin, and it looks better, at least as far as the quality of the visual effects is concerned. But the other problem is that aesthetically, this just does not. It just looks very odd seeing Will Smith's face on this big blue genie body. So I don't know. I'm just on top of that. The rest of the quick shots in this movie just look super artificial. Like everything about it looks like it's some kind of cheesy soap opera or something like that. Like you see a quick shot of the parade that Aladdin goes through as Prince Ali Ababwa, and it just looks incredibly fake. And so I do wonder if maybe one of the things that they're going for here is to give it kind of an artificial, almost Bollywood feel, since that would give it some international appeal. But even then, like, it's just, I don't know, there's something about it that just feels weird to me.
Yeah, I would say that that's kind of a look that has been consistent with all of the Disney live action remakes. And it kind of worked a little bit for Beauty and the Beast because that level of artifice almost fitted that Baroque style of the film. But here it just looks really fake and looks really just cartoonish in a bad way. Because I love cartoons, I love anime series, but this does not do justice to the original animated film.
I'm so disappointed because, I'm such a Disney fan, and I did not like the Beauty and the Beast live action remake. I know HT, you didn't as well, and especially, but at least they got the main characters looking right. Like I thought Emma Watson as Belle looked great, and the Beast looked great, but then like it was all the side characters, like the objects in the Beast castle that looked like horrible. And I guess the same thing's happening here because Genie is not the main character of this tale. But I don't know. I guess let's wait until we see more, guys. Let's hold off on judgment. Although, if you look at Twitter and film Twitter, it seems like everybody has completely written off this movie at this point. It's kind of sad. But that brings us to the end of today's Slash Film Daily. You can find more of all the stories we mentioned on today's podcast on slashfilm.com and linked in the show notes. This podcast, Slash Film Daily, is published every weekday on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please feel free to send your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com. And please head on over to iTunes, rate and review this podcast, tell your friends, spread the word. We'll see you tomorrow. It should be called Terminator Judgment Day again.
Judgment Night.
Judgment Night, yes. Wait, do you think people would hate that if it was called Judgment Night?
Yes, I would immediately hate that.
Judgment Before Midnight.